get started right away. So, welcome again. My name is Mark O'Donnell. I am the visionary and CEO at EOS Worldwide. And EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It was made popular by our founder, Gino Wickman, who wrote the book Traction, that has sold well over 1 million copies, and the Traction Library has sold over 3.7 million copies. Just so you know, I'm not practicing on you here. There's over 330,000 companies who are using our tools, and over 32,000 have hired an EOS implementer, of which there's 892 of them in 19 countries all over the world. And as of today, my co-authors and I have launched our newest book called Issues. And, why would you name a book Issues? And really, we wrote this book with along myself and Jill Young and Sue Hawks, two incredible EOS implementers. And really, the subtitle tells you everything that you need to know, which is to remove friction from your business, fast track your growth, and ultimately ignite your greatness. And so that's the promise. And if you commit to what I'm about to walk you through, it will deliver. Because what we found in the many, many years that we've been doing this is that the biggest epidemic that wears down businesses is a failure to solve issues fast and permanently. Some businesses die from it, and others are just muddling along, never reaching their potential because they're stuck and they hit the same ceiling over and over again. And so that book is available on Amazon. Actually, today is, as I said, the launch date. So it's available today. And so the book is the talk, and the talk is the cure to the issues here. So, quick orientation for those of you who are not familiar with EOS is what we call the EOS model. And if down in the chat you can drop down if you're familiar with EOS, if you've heard about Traction before, you can just put that in the chat just to so I know what level of EOS I need to frame up for everyone first. And EOS is really a complete holistic system that helps entrepreneurial leadership teams do three things that we call vision, traction, and healthy. So, vision is about getting the leadership team of an organization, typically 10 to 250 employees, 100% on the same page with their vision, where they're going, how they're going to get there. Traction is all about creating all the discipline, the habits, the accountability necessary to execute on every aspect of that vision. And healthy is about creating really healthy, cohesive, and functional leadership teams. Because as goes the leadership team, so goes the rest of the organization. So the average company, let's say there are 50 people, we just get to the point where all 50 out of 50 of the humans inside that business are seeing the same thing. They're wanting the same thing. They're becoming masters of execution, all the while moving forward as a really healthy, cohesive, and functional team. So I'm just going to quickly orient you around the six key components, because to the degree that we can strengthen these six key components, all of your issues start to fall into place. So with your vision, answering 8 simple questions. What are your core values? What is your core focus? What is your 10-year target? What is your marketing strategy? What is your 3-year picture? What is your 1-year plan? What are your quarterly rocks? And then what is your issues list? And then we get to the point where everyone in the business shares the answers to those 8 questions in unison. That's the vision component. The people component is about getting all the right people in the right seats. So every organization defines great people differently. And so we define who great people are, and then we get them in the right seats within the organization. So everyone shares your core values, they fit your culture, and they want and have the capacity to do their role really, really well. Data is about every team, starting with the leadership team and then throughout the entire organization, having a scorecard, and then everyone having a number that they're accountable for to deliver to the business each and every week. Then we go to the issues component, and that's the topic of this talk, is two simple disciplines. First, getting it out on an issues list. All progress starts by telling the truth. And then we use a simple process of IDS. So we solve those issues fast and permanently. We solve them at the root so they go away forever. And that's what the topic of the talk today. Then we've got the process component, which is documenting your handful of core processes. So everyone in your business is doing it your way, the right and best way each and every time. And then we get it followed by all. So everyone in the business, 50 out of 50, 250 out of 250, no matter what it is following each step in the process to produce consistency, to drive profit and scale throughout the organization. And finally, the traction component, where we're just driving discipline and accountability through the way you conduct your meetings, and everyone living in a 90-day world with rocks. So 90-day priorities, less is more. It's 3 to 7, driving the business forward. And so that is the 6 key components. And as I said, today we're going to do a deep dive on the issues component. The issues component has a special relationship to all other of the components. Data, that tells you that something is a little bit off, but it doesn't fix itself. Processes, they break down, but no process repairs itself. People issues, they fester. Vision gets cloudy. And if your team can't solve issues, you won't make progress in any of the other 5 key components. And just a little tip here is that 80% of your issues live in the people component or in process. 82% of the issues, the gap between what you want from your business and where you currently are, really is about people. And so that's where we find most of the issues lie in every single business, and then the rest are spread out throughout the model. But that is the one where people struggle the most. So there's 2 tools to master in the issues component, the issues list and IDS, identify, discuss, and solve. That's it. It's super simple, but it is not easy in any way, shape, or form. So we're going to go through here. So first, I want to define the word issues. It has usually a negative connotation. But the reality is they are obstacles, yes, they are barriers, but they're also ideas and they are opportunities. And so issues, they're not just problems. They are um, these well, they're opportunities, there's ideas, and I want you to just change your mindset around the word. And a good way to think about this is just take a mindset. When you hear the word issue, it should never be emotional. It should just be, it's just an issue and we'll solve it. Issues are really a gift. They're the raw material for growth, and the best leaders know that every obstacle, every opportunity should challenge and excite your team, not make them shrink back and be like, oh, this is so terrible, we have to deal with this. It's like, nope, it's just an issue. Let's solve it. And the obstacle is the way, as the Stoics taught us. And so the obstacle is the way, the issue is the way to unlock your full potential, to achieve what you want to achieve and get what you want to get from your business. So another way to think about this is I'm just going to describe sort of the happiest place on earth. We'll call it Disneyland or Disney World, whichever you prefer. And so we're going to think of this as the Disneyland of issue solving. And these 6 disciplines that I'm about to show you create the happiest, most productive teams on earth. And so we're going to walk through each. So the first is that everyone in the business has access to an issues list. Every person, not just the leadership team, the departmental level needs to have their issues list too. So everyone, top to bottom. Number two is that issues are added often, weekly. And this is a living document. So when in doubt, get it out of your head and on paper. If your list is empty, you're either not using it at all, you don't have one, or you're not pushing hard enough. Number three is issues are solved often. Great leadership teams solve 5 to 15 issues every single week in their weekly meeting. So 30 per quarter in planning sessions. So you have a weekly meeting with your leadership team and you have a quarterly meeting. And so 5 to 15 in each of those weekly meetings. And then when you get together with a team for the entire day, once per quarter in a planning session, you're solving 30 of them. That is the standard. You then follow the IDS pattern, which I'm going to teach you later for the greater good. And so, just to define what the greater good is that it's every word of your vision and your traction organizer. So, that is those 8 questions that I shared earlier, multiplied by genuine care and concerns. All right. So you got to care for your people. You got to know where you're going. And so that's the greater good. And you got to solve them with that vision in mind. Number five is we only solve the issue once and we solve it fast and we solve it permanently. So if the same issue just keeps coming back, you've treated symptoms and you haven't addressed the root. Number six is we IDS, identify, discuss, and solve for at least half the time in every single meeting that we're in. So no politicking, we're not piling on. And so in a 90-minute leadership team meeting, 45 minutes at least should be going to solving issues fast and permanently, hopefully more like an hour out of the 90 minutes. And so, really, that is what we want to do. And so, if we can do that throughout the entire organization, you're just going to be able to, well, live in Disneyland. It will be the happiest place on earth. So, I'm just going to answer a couple of the questions in the chat. So, number one is why are 80% of the issues pertaining to people? All right. So, and then number two is may or may not be related, but what about people causes these issues? Okay. So it's a great question. So when we think about what is going wrong inside of a business on the obstacles and barriers, it could be an idea and an opportunity, which is still a people issue, is that not everyone executes the process perfectly. Not everyone is hitting their numbers perfectly. We have culture issues that create politicking and they waste time. And ultimately, someone in the business is not doing precisely what they need to be doing at the precise time and perfectly. So, at the root, there's all these errors that exist throughout the organization, and they just compound and they have an impact to what you're trying to accomplish in the amount of time you're trying to accomplish it. And that's usually where it is because we're not great and perfect people who hire the great and perfect people. And so you just end up with issues there. So hopefully that answers your question. The second question here, it sounds like a lot of that also depends on how you define issues, level of granularity. That's exactly correct, which will go into sort of the iceberg of ignorance and where to solve issues and where they come from throughout this talk. So we got those 6 disciplines that will create the happiest place on earth for you. And at the root of great issues solving is trust. Now, this pyramid comes from Patrick Lencioni. It's called The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, and it's a great book. You should absolutely be familiar with it and read it. But at the base of high performing teams, it has trust as the foundation. It's the base, and without it, nothing else works. And trust means that everyone is working toward the greater good, not factions, not gossip or anything like that. Conflict is next, and I mean healthy conflict, because if you don't have conflict, you actually end up with more friction because it's all underneath. The more you avoid passionate discussion, the more bottlenecks you build, and your business really will never be what it could be without dynamic debate. Next is commitment, because once you've had that debate, everyone's and people can disagree and commit, you're just much more likely to actually do what you said you're going to do because you feel heard and you're committed to what the team has decided, which leads to a higher degree of accountability. And this is where the rubber meets the road. And then you have results at the top, and that's the payoff. And so when we map out issue solving, your ability to identify the root cause of an issue is directly related to the level of trust within the business or with the team. Then we have conflict, your ability to discuss and get all the best ideas out on the table. Then that leads you to the solve, the to do or two that you've decided upon that you're all committed to as a team. And then finally, accountability is that to do, that 7 day action that you've all committed to. You're holding each other accountable to delivering it. And so it's directly related to the level of vulnerable based trust within the organization. So, second question before I move on here is, does it mean that in the future, when we have solopreneurs, all employees being agents, EOS will no longer be relevant? Well, I'm not sure that we'll ever end up in a world where there's zero employees and everything is just driven by AI and there's no human needs, wants, and desires. So in a world where the robots take over and we're just sort of sitting and existing, doing nothing, then yeah, probably not relevant anymore. I just don't see a world in which humans don't want things. Um, Okay, so with that, we're going to move to the issues list. So we have two disciplines in that strengthening that issues component, the issues list, and IDS, identify, discuss, and solve. So when you think about these two businesses, one business has an issues list that is totally full, lots and lots of issues on it, and you have one that's completely and utterly empty. Well, which one is better? Well, the reality is the team that has a lot of issues, a lot of things on the list, you're just much, much better off because a business with no issues is dying from lack of ambition. If you don't have problems, challenges, ideas, and opportunities, then you have no goals, because if you have goals that you haven't reached, there must be a gap, right? So the issues are the gap between where you are and what it is that you want. That's just filled with a bunch of issues. And so if you don't have any, you have no ambition and you are not growing. So I had one client that actually required every single person to bring at least two issues to every single meeting. And if you didn't have two, you couldn't attend, because the best meeting the team ever had was when everyone brought a bunch of issues and they solved it and they got after it as a team and they solved those things at the root. So the message here is, when in doubt, get it out of your head, get it on paper, get it on, whatever system that you use. You don't need to have a solution. You just need to put something on the list. And that's the whole point of that. So then once you have that list, the first thing you do is you prioritize the list. The biggest, hairiest issues on that list you take first. Most people will try to say, oh, that's an easy one. Let's just solve that one. But that's the exact wrong thing to do. You got to dig down and you prioritize the top three issues. Then you start with the first issue, the biggest priority in the business, and you dig down to the root of that issue. Then you discuss as a team the potential solutions to that issue. And then you come up with a solve, which is a to do or two or three that will solve that issue at the root so it goes away forever. Takes a lot of courage to do that. And then you track accountability for accomplishing those to dos in the next 7 days. And some might be longer, some might turn out to be 90-day solves, and some might turn out to be 1 year solves. But the point there is that you're taking an action to solving and addressing that issue fast and permanently. So we're going to take a deep dive into each one of these steps so you're just crystal clear on the way this process will work. So we have a weekly meeting that's called a level 10 meeting. It starts with sharing the good news as a team. Then from there, you're reviewing your scorecard items, your rocks, are they on track? People, customer, employee headlines, just making sure that everyone is just reporting and driving accountability. You review your to-do list from the previous week, done or not done. 90% of your to-dos should be done every single week. And then you have your issues list that you're spending 60 minutes on. So that's just a high level of what a level 10 meeting is. So every single meeting, when you have this list, it should take you less than 15 seconds to select and prioritize your issues. You're not going to vote on this. It's just a huge, huge waste of time. It should be really, really obvious if you have the right people in the right seats, what are the biggest, hairiest issues that move the business forward. Um, Once you do, when you're preparing for the issues list, you have it coming into the meeting. Most people should be prepared for that. And then we have a role in EOS called the integrator, the second in command. It can be the CEO from time to time. They're the ones who kind of make the final call and they're moving the business along in those meetings. You should be prioritizing your issues outside of meetings. So when you have a conversation with one of your direct reports, you want to always be asking them what's the most important issue on their mind. And every time I have a conversation with any of my leadership team members, I just kind of start, hey, what's on your mind? Get it all out. And we just create an issues list and then we tackle it one issue at a time in order of priority. Some issues we say, hey, well, where should this be processed? Because not every issue is a leadership team issue. And so you want to push your issues to the lowest levels of the business, which we'll kind of get into during this talk. So, if you recall, I said at the root of everything is vulnerable based trust. And so there's a concept called the iceberg of ignorance. And if you think of this as the levels of a team of a company, and so the leadership team is sort of at the top, then you have your mid managers, then you have supervisors and people sort of on the front lines of the organization. Only about 4%, and there's a lot of studies on this, of the issues rise to the level of the leadership team, about 9% to your mid managers, and 74% to the supervisor or foreman level, however, whatever terms you use to describe that level. But usually, about 100% of the in the details issues are known and understood by your frontline employees. And so we've got to solve the issues where they are, right? And so we got to teach our people throughout the entire organization how to effectively solve issues fast and permanently. And oftentimes the leadership team just simply doesn't want to know what the real issues are. And you got to create a mindset where, hey, ideas are free. It's okay for you to voice your opinion, to have total organizational trust top to bottom, where no one is afraid to just get all the issues out before they become an issue. And that's really what prevents sort of this reactionary firefighting type organization where you're just always running around trying to solve issues all day. So Einstein said you can't solve an issue from the same level at which it was created, and you want to spend most of your time questioning, identifying, is which we're going into now after you've prioritized. You if in IDS, so if you say you would spend 10 minutes on an issue, 8 minutes is probably going to be spent on the identify step and making sure that you understand the issue at its root. And so you spend a lot of time here. Whose issue is this? Who owns this issue within the organization? What's the problem we're really solving? What's the idea we're really taking advantage of? Is it real or is it just made up? Is it a hallucination? And so when we think about this, there's a little bit of a issues scale in terms of magnitude of impact in the business, some tactical and some strategic. So issues kind of start here with a small eye, and then they get to a big eye where it's big and hairy. And usually the small one starts as, "Hey, I need to tell you something," and it sort of whispers in the hallway. And what you need from them is an idea, a challenge, and your support or a decision. So they just need to be really clear. Hey, instead of just sort of being really opaque with what the issue is, they need to be really clear and precise on what the idea is, what the challenge to the way we're currently doing things is, the support that they need to get something done, or a decision that they just need to put a tidy bow on something and be able to move on. To the other side, where you got these big and hairy issues, you don't have the answers. You got to just take a chance. So sometimes we got to execute on an issue in order to figure out what the issue actually is at the root, because we just don't know. We're not smart enough to find out what the root truly is. And so you just take a chance. You execute on something and you get some feedback. You create really tight feedback loops on that, which then helps you identify even more issues, because you're going to have stuff that works, stuff that doesn't. You're going to assign someone which meeting in the business that issue belongs to, and then someone has to own the issues list on every team throughout that. And then you create a goal, or a one-year plan goal, or a 90-day rock, or it's a 7-day to do to get that thing done, no matter the size that it is. All right. The other thing is that you can use the model to identify the root issue, which is, it could be an issue. It could be people issues. I said that's where most of them lie. It could be a process issue where it used to work when you were 10 or 15 people, but that issue, that process does not work at 150 people or 1,000 people or 10,000 people. So sometimes the process itself is causing the issue. Sometimes the data is an issue where we're not either being accountable to it. We don't know what the goals are, or we have a data issue where we're reporting the wrong things or the wrong way, and there's errors within them. There's an accountability issue that people just aren't executing really, really well. There could be a vision issue. If you're selling a product or service that nobody wants, in that case, you just aren't going to be able to get what you want. If you're selling copier machines to a non-government organization, you're probably not going to be doing particularly well. So that could be a vision issue. So with that, you can call this the fire department approach when you are solving issues. So what I mean by that is most fire departments spend most of their time with prevention. But when there's a fire, the number one goal is to put out the fire. You can't just say, "Hey, we're going to solve this fast and permanently, and we're going to take 3 weeks to do it." We've got to sometimes stop the bleeding. We've got to put out the fire immediately. Then from there, we're going to say, "Okay, we solved this for now. Let's put this on the issues list, and we are going to find the root so this just doesn't happen again." And so we're going to identify, discuss, and solve that issue at the root so it doesn't come back, so it doesn't become a fire later. So when you do that, now you've identified the root issue. We are crystal clear as a team what the root cause issue is. We're going to move to the discussion step. And we're going to have some healthy debate, some healthy conflict on what the potential solutions to this issue really are. And so the discuss step is built on that foundation of healthy conflict. We're going to get all the information about the issue. Remember the who. Who owns it. We're going to listen, all the skills and abilities around that room. You're not going to just wait for your turn to talk. You actually want to hear what people are saying. You're going to create buy-in for the eventual solution when you do that, because everyone is having something to offer, and they're going to feel heard. When people don't feel heard during the discussions, they just won't commit to the solution, and that's where accountability goes to die. And so this is where trust is built or broken in this discussion step. So remembering the who means you just don't forget the human element, right? Behind every issue are real people with real perspectives. You got to listen. You got to truly listen, and your internal dialogue needs to match your external dialogue. So if you're sitting there and you're thinking something, oh, that's a terrible idea, that's very bad, like you should actually be saying it out loud. So if you're thinking something different from what's being said, you've got to speak up, and otherwise you won't be able to get there. All right, and so next we're going to just talk about quickly three types of decision making. You've got command, consult, and consensus. So command, and so when you look at these different accesses, you have from time to start, how fast it takes, so fast to slow, and then buy-in from low to high. And so with command style, that's really fast to start, fast to solve, sort of maybe, but it has really low buy-in. So this is really just the boss deciding. You want to use this really sparingly for true emergencies. So you're going to put out the fire, and the X at the bottom left shows where that lands. Next, you move to consult. And this is really the middle ground. The X sits in the middle. This is where you gather input, then the leader decides. This is where you really want to live. This is where IDS lives. Everyone has their say, voices are heard, and then the decision maker makes the call. And then the last is consensus. It is really slow, but it has high buy-in, maybe. So slow to start, high buy-in in theory, and that X there is at the top right. But consensus management doesn't work. And we have the 10 commandments of issues solving and decision making. And number one is thou shalt not rule by consensus, because eventually group consensus decisions really will put you out of business. It just doesn't work. So IDS is the consult model. Everyone speaks, no one piles on. The integrator, CEO, or team leader makes the final call, and anyone who doesn't agree with that can disagree and commit. And that's what creates really healthy team and really good problem solving or issues solving. So with that, we're going to kind of walk us through here what that discuss step looks like, that conflict. And so number one is you got to get all the information about the issue out on the table. Remember the who, we're all people, and you got to listen to everyone's differing perspectives. Get on the same page with that. It helps you create buy-in for the eventual solution. So here's some discussion tips. Advocacy versus inquiry. In smaller groups, 3 to 7 people on a particular team, people advocate for positions, and that's fine, their position on what the issue is and how to solve it. But as group sizes grow, you got to shift to inquiry, and so the leader has to ask questions instead of pushing solutions. Next is politicking. So if someone says the same thing twice, that's politicking. You got to say it once. That's essential. If you say it twice, you're lobbying. You have to say, okay, do you feel heard? You got to ask them directly. If you hear them say it twice, say, hey, do you feel like you're being heard right now? Because maybe we just don't agree to it. And if you're just repeating yourself, it doesn't increase the probability of all of a sudden we're going to agree with you. And if they do feel heard, you just got to move on and they got to stop talking. You can use a whiteboarding tool, and so get things visual. You got to write it down. And when you identify the root, just write it on the board and circle it, double underline it. Hey, this is the issue we are trying to solve here. It could be a people issue. And so we use a tool called the people analyzer, which is simply what are they aligned with our core values, and do they want and have the capacity to do their role? So you got to make sure you've got the right people. They're rock stars in their seat. Then we've got probability versus possibility. So don't let fear of remote possibilities paralyze you, right? You're just kind of making things up. Focus on what is probable. Make decisions on probabilities, not worst case fantasies, if you will. Angel's advocate. So instead of playing the devil's advocate, tearing down ideas, play the angel's advocate. What would make this work? How could this succeed? Then lastly, we've got go back to identify. So if you can't get a discussion, so if the discussion reveals that you've missed the route, you got to have the discipline to go back to the identify step. But be honest why you're going back. Don't use it as an escape hatch to avoid the solving. So, quick question here. What do you do if they don't feel heard? So, when someone is repeating, you notice that they're politicking and you stop and say, "Hey, Jim, it seems like you're not being heard here with what your suggestion is. Tell us a little bit about why you think I don't think that what you're suggesting will work, and here's why I don't, but you keep repeating it. Do you feel like I'm not understanding what you're saying?" And so you just have that live conversation with the team to make sure that Jim, as a team member, a valued team member, feels heard. So it might take them a little bit to talk about it from a different angle or different perspective so we truly understand what he or she is really thinking about and talking about with the way they're communicating, if that helps. Okay, so now we're going to move to the solve, and this is where the commitment comes in. And so, solve is built on commitment, and someone's got to land the plane. You got to conclude, conclude, conclude. And one way to think about this is the pendulum approach, which I'll show a little graphic what that means. Because when you're taking a shot at a solution, most teams swing either too drastic, like, oh, go fire that guy, or too soft, let's promote him. The pendulum visual that I'll show in a second shows sort of like the right balance between being overly aggressive and not aggressive enough. Then we've got the five leadership abilities. So when we think about the five leadership abilities, which are to simplify, to delegate, predict, systemize, and structure, you got to run every solution through the lenses. Are we simplifying? Are the right people doing it? Are we delegating this to the right people? How are we doing on our level of prediction? Is it in line with where we're going as an organization? If it's a system issue, we want to do second order and third order thinking around we're going to modify this system. Well, what are all the impacts of that system change? And then the structure, do we have all the right people doing all the right things? We're going to lead, manage, and hold people accountable. And so is the right person leading? Is the right person managing? Are we holding all our people accountable? And we might ask, well, what's your recommendation? So don't just bring problems, bring recommendations, take a shot on that, and you're going to experiment. So I talked about feedback loops, and sometimes you just don't know, and you just have to take a shot at it. You're going to experiment with some things and create a feedback loop, test it out, try it for 90 days. And then you want to restate the solve, which is a little bit bigger than a to do. The solve is a strategic decision. The to do is the 7 day action step. And so the solve might be to restructure the sales compensation plan, and the to do is draft a new comp plan by Friday. And so that's sort of the way you want to think about those solves. So just thinking about that, the pendulum approach there, you want to go right for the middle there, not too soft, not too harsh. You want to make really intentional decisions with that. So the last is the to-do step, and this is where the rubber meets the road, and that's all about accountability. So what are we going to do in the next 7 days? Every solve really has to generate at least one specific time-bound to do, not vague intentions, concrete actions. So who's going to do it? One name, one owner. Shared accountability is no accountability. Who else needs to know? So this is sort of the cascading message, and it really, really matters. Who needs to be in the know based on this decision? And then finally, I just want to talk about, so with that to do, you're going to take 7 day action and you're going to hold people accountable. When we talk about issues inside the business, this is sort of like the money in the mattress, the stuffed mattress. And the image really says it all. The money under the mattress is the unrealized value that is trapped in your business because every unsolved issue is just cash stuffed under the mattress, dead money, not working for you. Every issue you solve fast and permanently releases the trapped value. It goes from dead money to growth fuel. And the best teams in the world are obsessed about finding that money. They know every friction point, every process breakdown, every people issue is dollars and opportunities just sitting idle and they're untapped. So the question is, how much money is in under your mattress right now? What issues are you tolerating that are costing you growth, profit, overall momentum? And so that is just the high level overview of issues, the issues list, and the discipline of IDS. So I think we've got about 20 minutes for Q&A. And so feel free to ask any questions. So we want to go back to the solve. I think we have more in that. Oh, there we are. Yep. Yes. There we go. All right. What's the question? Is it possible for people to unmute or we just do via chat? What's the question? Oh, got it. So as we kind of think about this and feel free to drop all your questions in the chat there, which is that issues are those obstacles, barriers, ideas, opportunities. And if you think about it, at the root of it is anything that is unresolved in your business. And when we have that mindset that it's just an issue and it's anything that is unresolved, and we're going to put it out on a list and we're going to solve them in order of priority, man, you can really move fast in the business. Really successful people, really successful businesses are just very, very good at setting up their issues, knocking them down, and solving them for the greater good. Um, okay, so the question, how to dose the time in your organization to have a resultative but lean issue resolution process. Um, when you just so I understand the question, so we have the leadership team. We're going to work our way throughout. So say it's a 50-person business, and so we're going to teach them all identify, discuss, and solve. So the first thing to do is you just teach them the process. Um, and you've got to master it yourself as a leader in the organization. If you're on the leadership team, you have an issues list, you're prioritizing, you're identifying, discussing, solving as a discipline. So it's see one, do one, teach one with that. So once you feel like you've got that process mastered, you're then going to teach your team, hey, the team that is below you, carry an issues list, smoke it all out, open and honest, get it out on the issues list. And then every week we're going to solve these issues. So hopefully that's helpful. So then confused on 7 days, 30, 90. So sometimes, most of the time, you can take the first step to solve an issue fast and permanently in 7 days. But there's sometimes that there's actions that are going to take it's now a project and it's going to take us 90 days to really solve this at the root so it goes away forever. And so that would become a 90-day priority that you're working on. Sometimes it's going to take even longer than that, and it's going to be an entire year or more. And so then you set up the goals appropriately to solve that. Hopefully that answers your question, Vincent. And so first action, sometimes it could be complete 90 days because the whole project fits in that 90-day window, 1 year, so forth and so on. Okay. What about issues that can't be solved, like of a budget, legal, compliance? Sometimes this is the case where you just have to either, if you don't even have to put it on an issues list, because you're carrying really two types of issues list, a long-term issues list and a short-term issues list, which we didn't get into at this high level presentation. But you're just going to acknowledge that they exist and then just never talk about it again, never complain about it again. We all know it's an issue. We all know we can't solve it. So let's just stop wasting our time talking about it. And so that's what we teach our teams to do is, yep, we can't solve this legal compliance thing because it's required by law. Let's stop talking about it. Um, and you just agree as a team that we're never going to mention this thing again because you can't solve it. So hopefully that's helpful. So the next is how do you prioritize the issues? So you have that issues list, and if you think about the vision for the organization, what are we trying to accomplish? Let's say that we are a 2 million business and we want to be a 5 million business, and we know that based on that issues list, we've got to sell a certain um, amount. Um, and so you've got issues that are on your issues list that are related to sales. So I would prioritize those as number one. So whatever the one thing is, our sales manager quit last week. Well, that should be number one because we want to grow the overall revenue of the organization. And so therefore, that's the number one thing we need to solve. Not there's no snacks in the break room. Like let's leave the snacks in the break room off, has nothing to do with our overall revenue. And so let's just ignore that. Um, so that's kind of how you're thinking about the prioritization. Of course, you got to put out the fire first, just like we talked about. But then from there, we're going to say, all right, what are the things that are most preventing us from getting what we want from the business? Let's start there. And even though it makes our hands sweat, they're really hard, they require loads of courage, you got to start there. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question, Sung. Okay, in your experience, up to what level of the organization scale does this framework work optimally? Now, I've worked this process in a company with 8,800 employees, 4.8 billion in revenue, and it works just fine with all 8,800 employees because it's really, really simple. There's all these frameworks out there to solve issues at the root, the failure mode analysis, and really, really complicated stuff. And those things just don't scale because they're complex. But IDS, carrying an issues list, identify, discuss, and solve, is very, very simple. And so we find it scales quite easily throughout the entire organization when it's taught as a discrete discipline. It also creates a common language throughout the business where you meet someone, you have something that's clearly needing to be dealt with, you say, okay, let's IDS this. And it just now we understand what IDS is. We're going to sit here, we're going to identify the root, we're going to discuss, and we're going to solve it. And someone's coming out with a to do or two to move the business forward. And so it scales very, very well throughout very, very large organizations. And then the follow-up question to that is how would we continue using this framework when organizations grow beyond the scale when the framework was adopted? So again, 8,800 employees, that's my personal experience in the United States. We have governments, we have all sorts of different types of organizations, much larger than that, who really um, will very, very large organization because it is so simple. So hopefully that answers your question, Ganesh. Yes, someone you should definitely read Traction by Gino Wickman. Gives the complete holistic view of what it is that we do. Okay. Any other questions about EOS, about issues solving specifically? If I start with a five-member team, which then later grows to 20, 50, 100, what would you advise for the organization to continue using the framework? So, as an organization grows, you're going to hit the ceiling, stuff will stop working. And what often happens is that we kind of add complexity to things that shouldn't be complex. And so you start to adopt very sophisticated tools and it starts to actually crumble on top of the business. So if you're starting with five, you're going to use the same discipline throughout. And as Anthony said, you read Traction. If you got five people, definitely read Traction, and then you'll start to see that complete holistic system because it isn't really just about the issues list. This framework works at any scale, at any size, and really nothing changes. But the who's solving the issue changes. Where in the beginning, if you're a 5 person team, you're solving all the tactical, nitty gritty, detailed stuff. As the business grows, you start and you have teams underneath you, you start to push those nitty gritty issues down to the next level. And as you grow some more, you push the issues down. And so what happens at 100, 200, 300, 8,000, 10,000 is that leadership team are solving big strategic on the business issues versus in the business issues. And so that's kind of where you see the type change, the type of issue you're solving. Um, and so hopefully that answers your question there. So the type of issue, the big eyes are at the leadership team, the small eyes are on the front lines. All right. Yes, but the discipline of IDS remains the same. And so with our issues book here, it is on Amazon and it will teach you the high levels of what EOS is. So it is a standalone book and a deep dive into the topic of issues. Yeah, great question, Anna. So there's the Harvard study on this. Um, where what is the ideal team size? And they came up with 4.6. And I'm like, well, who's the point 0.6 person? I don't really know. So you can say, think about it as like uh, 3 to 7. You don't want more than 7 people on a team. Everything starts to take a lot longer after that. It has diminishing returns. So I like a 5 person team, 6 person team. That's kind of the ideal spot for me. Anything more than that, you're just wasting a lot of time. So hopefully that's helpful. All right. Got a couple here. Sometimes it's the most difficult stumbling stone to ensure that the cascading messages are received and adopted. Yes, that is 100% accurate. After you conclude a meeting, you talk about cascading messages, you want to just really recap all the decisions that you made inside of that meeting, all the to-dos and who's got them. And then part of that is deciding, okay, who is not here that needs to be in the know? And we make that decision. Okay, this team, that team, this customer, that customer, whoever it is, vendor, supplier, doesn't matter. And then we say, as a team, okay, well, what are we going to tell them? And so we all got to agree as a leadership team what it is we're going to say to that group, team, or company. And then we're going to decide how we're going to tell them. Are we going to send an email? Are we going to do a video? Are we going to make a phone call? Whatever it is, text message, doesn't matter. So you decide on what the message is and how you're going to deliver it and to who. And so that's all about cascading messages. And if you have that discipline, yeah, you do a pretty good job with cascading messages.